June 6, 1944. The invasion that changed the course of history was a moment of destiny, but the outcome of the war was not hinging on tanks or battleships. It was hinging on logistics, the single, insidious threat that could grind the entire war effort to a devastating halt. Every great advance, every sacrifice, broke down at the problem of the final 100 yards. Before 1941, no major amphibious operation was practically possible. The U.S. Navy's existing landing craft were useless. They were cumbersome, slow, and their deep drafts guaranteed they would be stranded far from shore. This was a military disaster. Soldiers, loaded with equipment, were forced to jump into the freezing sea and wade ashore under a torrent of fire, becoming exposed targets. The war that was being won bravely at sea was perpetually threatened by a potential loss in the logistical chaos of the shoreline. Commanders didn't just need a boat, they needed a tool that could conquer the chasm between ship and sand in seconds, not minutes. The immediate, existential crisis was ultimately solved not by a massive industrial complex or a naval genius, but by an eccentric outsider, Andrew Jackson Higgins. This former lumberman and boat builder from the Louisiana bayous conceived not a fixed naval structure, but a modular, high-speed delivery platform. His solution, the Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel LCVP, or simply the Higgins Boat, was a deceptively simple, revolutionary plywood box with a game-changing drop-down ramp. This simple boat, designed for swamp mud and timber, became the backbone of the global war machine. It was light enough to run onto dry sand yet robust enough to survive relentless punishment. It solved the war's most critical logistical challenge and secured victory on every major front, from Guadalcanal to Normandy. In the ultimate testament to its importance, General Dwight D. Eisenhower described Higgins as the man who won the war for us. We begin the ultimate tale of how an outsider's genius and pragmatic ingenuity changed the nature of war forever. This is the definitive story of how simplicity conquered chaos and secured the final victory. Don't miss it. Subscribe now to unlock the full story of the LCVP, give this video a like, and share this essential history with the world. Andrew Jackson Higgins was born in Nebraska in 1886. But it was the humid, waterlogged environment of New Orleans and the Louisiana bayous that defined his career. Higgins was a brilliant, eccentric, and fiercely independent figure who left school early and dedicated himself to boat building. He was known for his aggressive business style and a deep understanding of practical hydrodynamics, far removed from the theoretical world of naval architecture. His early work focused entirely on creating vessels that could navigate the incredibly shallow, twisting, and often muddy waterways of the South. Higgins's first great challenge was helping the local logging and oil industries. They needed boats that could transport heavy loads of timber and drilling equipment across shallow marshes without getting stuck or damaging their propellers in the silt and mud. Traditional boat designs, with deep hulls and standard propellers, were entirely inadequate for this environment. He quickly recognized that existing boat designs were fundamentally flawed for this type of operation, leading him to his first critical innovation. In the late 1920s, Higgins designed the Eureka boat, a shallow-draft hull based on the principles of tunnel-stern propulsion. He placed the propeller in a specialized tunnel recess above the bottom of the boat, protecting it from submerged logs and mud. The flat-bottomed hull allowed the boat to plane over the water, making it incredibly fast and agile in the shallows. The Eureka boat was a commercial success, dominating the local logging and oil industries and catching the eye of the U.S. military, which was then searching for coastal patrol vessels. While Higgins was perfecting his shallow-water vessels, the United States Navy was struggling with its own designs for landing troops. Early experimental landing crafts were cumbersome, slow, and, most critically, they could not approach the shore. They had to stop several hundred yards out, forcing soldiers to wade ashore through deep water, often fully exposed to enemy fire. Naval architects were fixated on seaworthiness and ignored the single most important factor of an invasion: the final moment of landing. The U.S. Marine Corps, responsible for amphibious doctrine, quickly realized the military value of the Eureka boat, even before the Navy did. The Marines needed a small, durable vessel to ferry men and light equipment from troop transports to the beach during training exercises. In 1938, the Marine Corps requested Higgins to build a version of his Eureka boat, recognizing that its ability to hit the shore and retract quickly was exactly the trait the military lacked. This was the first official military order that put Higgins on the path to becoming a legend. The biggest hurdle for military planners was getting equipment and men off the boat and onto the beach quickly. Higgins, observing the Marines' training, saw the inefficiency of traditional side disembarkation. His next great leap was adding a bow ramp to a modified Eureka design. Though simple, this feature was revolutionary. It allowed cargo and personnel to exit straight onto dry land, dramatically reducing the time troops spent exposed and eliminating the need for them to wade through water. This design change, initially rejected by the Navy, was the critical link to the LCVP. The U.S. Navy's official Bureau of Construction and Repair had spent years and significant money developing its own unsatisfactory landing craft designs. When Higgins presented his superior, privately developed designs, including the ramp concept, the Navy initially favored its own bureaucracy and internal architects over the proven efficacy of Higgins's commercial work. This institutional inertia forced Higgins to fight fiercely against the Navy's own establishment to get his boat accepted, setting the stage for his later reputation as an aggressive outsider. Ironically, the final push needed to convince the U.S. Navy of the bow ramp's necessity came from a foreign source. Marine Corps officers showed Higgins a photo of a small Japanese landing craft that utilized a ramp design for beach operations. This external validation helped break the Navy's internal resistance. Higgins took the concept, merged it with the unique shallow-draft hull of his Eureka boat, and swiftly perfected the final design for what would become the LCVP. Higgins's genius extended to production. The LCVP was built primarily from plywood, specifically marine-grade wood-called mahogany plywood, a revolutionary choice at the time. This decision was brilliant. Plywood was non-strategic, it didn't compete with steel needed for battleships, cheap, easily worked by a non-specialized workforce, and most importantly, incredibly resilient against the constant pounding of waves and sand. This material choice allowed him to scale production to unprecedented levels later in the war. The LCVP, designated as such, saw its first crucial combat tests early in the war, notably during the 1942 Guadalcanal campaign. These island-hopping landings were brutal, high-stakes operations. The ability of the Higgins boats to reliably deliver men, jeeps, and supplies through shallow coral reefs and onto contested beaches proved its value under fire. While early losses were high, the LCVP's performance compared to earlier models solidified its status as the indispensable vehicle for amphibious war. Once the LCVP design was officially adopted, the immediate problem was quantity. Andrew Higgins, taking inspiration from Henry Ford, became a pioneer of wartime mass production in shipbuilding. He implemented a true assembly line process in his New Orleans yards, a revolutionary concept for large wooden vessels. His innovative use of jigs and pre-cut plywood sections allowed his largely inexperienced workforce to assemble boats at an astonishing pace, turning out new landing craft faster than any other shipyard in the country. Higgins Industries' growth was explosive. Before the war, Higgins operated a single boatyard with fewer than 75 employees. By 1943, due to the critical demand for the LCVP, his company had expanded to 7 massive plants across the New Orleans area, employing more than 25,000 people. This massive, rapid scaling demonstrated how the private sector could mobilize commercial ingenuity to solve a national crisis on an industrial scale. Higgins Industries was famous not only for its speed but also for its groundbreaking employment practices. Andrew Higgins hired women, African Americans, and other minorities into skilled positions at a time when racial segregation and gender discrimination were still standard across much of the South. Crucially, he paid all employees equal wages for equal work, regardless of race or gender, making Higgins Industries a social pioneer long before the civil rights movement gained momentum. The final design of the LCVP was a testament to simplicity under pressure. Measuring 36 feet long and powered by a diesel engine, it could carry 1 jeep and 12 combat-equipped soldiers, or 8,000 pounds of cargo. Its draft was just 3 feet when loaded, allowing it to glide over shallows. Its plywood hull, reinforced with steel plating, made it surprisingly resilient to machine gun fire and shock, while its flat bottom ensured stability during the critical moments of disembarkation. While Higgins designed the boats, the success of every landing hinged on the bravery and skill of the crews. The LCVP was piloted primarily by sailors from the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Coast Guard. These men were responsible for navigating through heavy seas, avoiding mines, finding the exact spot on the beach under fire, dropping the ramp precisely, and, most dangerously, backing the flat-bottomed boat off the beach quickly to avoid being swamped or hit. They were the unsung heroes of the last mile of every invasion. The LCVP's defining feature was its simple yet revolutionary front ramp. This ramp was often made of steel, in later models, or reinforced wood and was secured by strong cables. The mechanism was designed to be quickly lowered by the crew once the boat touched the beach, allowing the immediate discharge of troops and vehicles. Critically, the ramp did not rely on complex hydraulics or machinery, emphasizing Higgins's focus on simplicity and field repairability. The genius of the ramp was measured in seconds. Studies showed that the LCVP could discharge its full complement of 36 combat-ready soldiers, or equivalent cargo, in less than 40 seconds once the ramp dropped. This blinding speed minimized the time the boat and the vulnerable troops were exposed to direct enemy fire, turning a slow, deadly affair into a rapid, decisive burst of action. The ramp effectively saved thousands of lives through sheer efficiency. The ability to operate in shallow water was entirely due to the hull design perfected for the Louisiana bayous. The tunnel stern housed the propeller and rudder within the hull's structure, shielding them from coral, sandbars, and beach obstacles. Without this protection, the LCVP would have been rendered useless on the first shallow beach, proving that Higgins's early commercial experience was more valuable than the Navy's deep-water doctrine. Despite its simple design, the flat-bottomed LCVP had a major challenge: its lack of maneuverability when retracting from the beach. Once the ramp dropped and the troops left, the flat hull, designed to sit directly on the sand, required strong reverse thrust to pull off the beach quickly before the next wave swamped it. The success of the operation heavily depended on the immediate, precise coordination between the engine crew and the coxswain, pilot, to execute a fast retreat under fire. The Higgins Boat didn't just carry soldiers. It carried an entirely new military doctrine. The LCVP proved that large-scale, coordinated invasions across open beaches were possible. This capability unlocked every major theater of the war, from Operation Torch in North Africa and Operation Husky in Sicily, to the massive landings at D-Day and the unforgiving Pacific Islands. The simple boat became the physical manifestation of the Allied commitment to taking the fight directly to the enemy's shores. The peak moment for the Higgins Boat came on June 6, 1944. On D-Day, thousands of LCVPs were used to ferry the first waves of American, British, and Canadian troops onto the 5 designated beaches. The LCVPs were indispensable. They carried the men who established the initial foothold, delivered critical anti-tank guns and medical supplies, and even evacuated the first casualties. The scale of their deployment confirmed General Eisenhower's eventual assessment: the invasion could not have been sustained without them. While Normandy proved the LCVP's value in mass landings, the Pacific theater tested its endurance against a different enemy: coral. The ability of the flat-bottomed boat to ride over shallow coral reefs without snagging its propeller was vital during the island-hopping campaign, e.g. Tarawa and Iwo Jima. However, the coral could tear through the wooden hulls, leading to high attrition rate. Nonetheless, the LCVP remained the only viable method for delivering troops directly to the shoreline in these unique, brutal environments. Andrew Higgins's influence extended far beyond the LCVP. His company also manufactured several other crucial landing craft, including the larger LCM landing craft mechanized, designed to carry heavy tanks and bulldozers, and the formidable PT boats, patrol torpedo boats, which were fast, heavily armed coastal attackers. These diverse contracts solidified Higgins Industries' role not just as a boat builder, but as the central, indispensable naval contractor for the entire Allied amphibious strategy. By the end of the war, Higgins Industries had produced an astounding number of vessels. The final tally exceeded 20,000 boats, with the LCVP alone accounting for over 12,500 units. This output was not only a feat of American industrial capacity but also a testament to Higgins's assembly line method. He effectively turned a specialized shipbuilding process into a repeatable, high-volume manufacturing operation, producing the vessels faster than they could be lost in combat. Despite its success, the LCVP had inherent vulnerabilities stemming from its simple design. Its wooden hull offered minimal protection against anything larger than small arms fire. An artillery shell or a well-placed mortar could easily destroy the vessel and its entire complement of troops. Furthermore, the flat bottom, while excellent for shallow water, made the LCVP dangerously unstable in heavy seas and prone to being swamped or capsizing if poorly loaded. It was a utilitarian design focused purely on the mission, not comfort or long-term durability. Andrew Higgins was known throughout the industry as a volatile, charismatic, and often profane boss. He was famous for his temper, sometimes firing employees on the spot, only to rehire them hours later after a massive public argument. This eccentric personality fueled his industrial drive. He demanded impossible speeds and total efficiency from his staff, seeing any delay as a direct threat to the soldiers waiting for his boats at the front. His demanding nature was, paradoxically, key to achieving his massive wartime output. Higgins's aggressive nature extended to his relationship with the very Navy he was supplying. He frequently bypassed official channels and bureaucratic red tape, arguing directly with high-ranking officers and even President Roosevelt himself when he felt Navy specifications were flawed or slowing production. This constant battle against institutional inertia was a double-edged sword. It made him enemies but ensured his superior designs were adopted and built quickly. The mass production of the LCVP faced continuous logistical threat. While the design saved strategic steel, the demand for marine-grade plywood and specific hardwoods grew exponentially. Higgins had to secure a massive, dedicated supply chain for quality lumber, often dealing directly with suppliers in the Pacific and Central America. This need for wood made him a key player in the lumber import-export business, showcasing the massive, complex resource web supporting one simple boat. Higgins Industries' policy of equal pay and integrated workplaces was a radical stance, particularly in 1940s New Orleans. This was more than mere idealism, it was pragmatic. By eliminating racial and gender barriers, Higgins was able to tap into a vast, skilled labor pool that his competitors ignored, giving him a critical advantage in meeting the military's crushing production deadlines. His workers understood that they were not just building boats, but defying social norms to serve the national interest. The ultimate validation of Higgins's genius came directly from the Supreme Allied Commander. General Eisenhower's famous quote, that Higgins was the man who won the war for us, was not hyperbole. Eisenhower understood that without the LCVP's unique ability to land vehicles and troops directly onto open beaches, massive operations like D-Day would have been logistically impossible to sustain. The quote solidified Higgins's legacy, recognizing the logistical inventor over the frontline general. The end of World War II brought the immediate collapse of the immense demand for landing craft. Higgins Industries, which had employed over 25,000 people and operated 7 plants, saw its massive government contracts vanish overnight. The company attempted to transition back to commercial boat building, but the sudden shift in the economy and the sheer size of the wartime operation proved too difficult to sustain. The industrial empire built on the LCVP rapidly shrunk and was ultimately dismantled. Despite his wartime triumph and national recognition, Andrew Higgins struggled to adapt to the post-war economy. He continued to advocate for innovative designs and fight against bureaucracy, but the momentum was lost. He focused on various commercial projects, including housing and transport, but none matched the scale or impact of the LCVP. Higgins died in 1952, a successful but somewhat frustrated industrialist who had peaked during the greatest global conflict. While the U.S. military began decommissioning its vast fleet of wooden landing craft, the Higgins boat found a second life around the globe. Thousands of surplus LCVPs were sold to allied nations and commercial entities. They were adapted for fishing, ferrying cargo in remote areas, and even as platforms for coastal oil exploration. The LCVP's inherent durability and ability to operate in any shallow water environment ensured that the design continued to serve long after the war was over. The LCVP's impact is still felt today. The core principles established by Higgins, the shallow draft, the flat bottom, and, crucially, the bow ramp, remain the essential blueprint for all modern mechanized landing craft, like the Modern Landing Craft Utility, or LCU. Higgins proved that the entire success of a naval operation depended on the last few feet of water, a doctrine that naval powers worldwide continue to follow. Beyond its function, the Higgins boat became a symbol of American industrial capacity and engineering pragmatism. It wasn't a sleek destroyer or a massive bomber. It was an efficient, mass-produced tool that solved a specific, critical problem. The LCVP stands as a powerful testament to the idea that victory in World War II was won not just by military strategy, but by the relentless ingenuity of American manufacturers like Andrew Higgins. Despite the undeniable success of the LCVP, Andrew Higgins continuously championed the use of wood, specifically laminated plywood, for naval construction, arguing that it was faster to repair, less vulnerable to certain magnetic mines, and easier to replace. This philosophy often put him at odds with the powerful Navy architects who preferred steel for virtually everything. The debate between pragmatic simplicity, wood, and deep-sea durability, steel, highlights the fundamental philosophical differences at the heart of wartime production. The military spent vast sums on the Higgins empire, viewing it not as an expense, but as a critical wartime investment. While the individual LCVP was cheap to manufacture, the cost of scaling the infrastructure, 7 plants, housing, machinery, and a massive labor force, was enormous. However, when measured against the cost of a failed invasion or the time saved in delivering vital supplies, the financial outlay proved to be one of the most cost-effective decisions of the war. Andrew Higgins was widely recognized for his genius. He received numerous honors and awards from the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps, often in ceremonies attended by high-ranking officials. However, the most profound tribute came directly from the troop. To the soldiers and Marines who rowed them onto hostile beaches, they weren't LCVPs. They were simply Higgins boats, a testament to the inventor's personal impact on the lives of those who fought the war. Today, preserving the legacy of the Higgins boat is a significant undertaking. Few original LCVPs survived the war, as they were often destroyed, lost in transit, or left to rot after decommissioning. The boats that remain are cherished museum pieces, requiring specialized conservation to protect their aging wooden hulls. These remaining few are crucial physical artifacts that allow modern audiences to connect directly with the simplicity and scale of the D-Day logistic. Final conclusion, summary: Andrew Higgins's greatest invention was not just a boat, it was the key to amphibious victory. By solving the problem of the final few yards of water, he fundamentally transformed the nature of naval warfare. The LCVP proved that the most complex military problems can sometimes be solved by the most basic, pragmatic engineering. His legacy, cemented by Eisenhower's quote, remains a powerful reminder. The man who built the simple wooden boats was the man who provided the tools to win the war.